So I'm recording this in 2020. I'm taking a step back to 2019 for a second. It's been quite a decade. In my, I think 3 years I've been doing this blog and recording. I kind of did a little reflection post, let's see, a week or two ago. Obviously December 11th, so it's been before 2020. Anyway, I wanted to just do a quick vlog. I don't do much of these anymore, just time. But this stuff has been a game changer for me. Blogging, vlogging, all these things I think are what contribute to a lot of me learning, a lot of me teaching, a lot of me coming up in your feed, whatever it be. And it's been a really humbling experience. So I want to just kind of do a reflection in a sense, and also just say, kind of give you where some of my inspiration's coming from lately, and what I'm up to, and how I've transitioned from a basic developer to more of a product person. So if you're interested in listening to this, feel free. If not, feel free to skip too. That's cool. In 2019 and many, I would say 5 or 6 years before that, from that time, I was more of a front-end developer, designer, more such of a designer than a developer. Up until like 2 or 3 years ago, I really wanted to approach development more and learn more of the back-end side of things, which is where I kind of discovered Ruby on Rails and just freaking took off. So hence the course and all the YouTube playlists and everything. That was just me learning. The YouTube channel in particular is my way of saying, or not even a way of saying it, but just a incentive to keep pushing. So week by week, I would produce more content and publish it. It would hold me accountable, and I think that's really important when you're trying to learn yourself. So in the sense of learning a new framework or language, whatever it is you want to do, I can vouch for either writing about it or documenting what you're doing over time. You'll run into a ton of errors and have a shitty time in many cases, because it's frustrating as hell when you don't understand it or you don't have someone to mentor you. But in that sense, that's how you learn. So if you consider those downsides good sides in a sense, because that shit, it builds up, it makes you stressed, but then you figure something out and it feels like, a sense of relief. You're learning, you're understanding it. Finally, you start to understand what errors you're getting or meaning and things like that. And it just takes time, and time is the ultimate thing that I think everyone competes with. And that's no, exception for me, for sure. Coming into 2020, I'm going to be having my second kid anytime now. So time is of the freaking essence, for sure. So sleep, time, all those things I don't really have anymore, and it's frustrating. It's part of being a parent, but it's also part of being a human. You just have to adapt and make it your own. So reflection of 2019 in particular, I think coming into 2019, I think JavaScript was my old nemesis. At the day job, I worked at Dribble at the time, dribble.com, and I was scared of JavaScript. I saw all the JavaScript in the code base and kind of understood it, but also was just like, where the fuck do I start? So I started just kind of building things on the side. So I started the JavaScript series on the channel. And lo and behold, after enough trial and tribulation, I kind of started to gain a grasp of it. I still don't love the language, just simply because it's so kind of open-ended. There's no strict, rigid way to do things. There's like 8 ways to do one thing if you want to do it any specific way. And I love and hate that. With Rails or Ruby, there's so many conventions you uphold that I think that's the strength that I like, the opinionated approach, in a sense. But it also makes it a delightful experience, which I think was DHH, the creator of Ruby on Rails, wanted. Ruby is that same way. So in the sense of things, I took a lot of time to find inspiration in 2019. I'm just kind of skimming this blog post that I wrote, but feel free to reach out and comment on it. I mentioned quite a few people I kind of look up to in the space. Where I worked at Dribble, Dan Cederholm was a big influence even before I worked there. It was kind of a shell shock thing when I got hired there. And it's just like, whoa, I'm talking to Dan. This is sweet. It's kind of like the godfather of CSS in a sense. So it was great kind of inspiration to start from that point. But on top of that, there was a lot of people I look to in the community that are obvious candidates of people that, kind of inspire you, whether they're working on a specific language or a product, or have just done things that kind of contribute to the stuff I like. So mostly product people, I would say, but a lot of people like building courses or services, etc., or just knowledgeable people that I like to follow. So you see Chris Coyer, of course, Justin Jackson with the Build Your SaaS podcast I've been listening to a lot. It's pretty enlightening. He also runs Transistor Radio. Derek Reimer started a company with Rob Walling way back when. It was email service provider. What was it called? Drip. And they sold it, but now they're on to new things. So it's been interesting seeing their transition from product people to Rob's now like an investor in a sense, and he runs a Startups for the Rest of His podcast, which is like on the 400th episode. So it's a really old podcast, but it's a good one. I really recommend you check that out. Ben Ornstein's been doing the Tuple thing. So if you've been following that, him and Derek Reimer are on a podcast together. I really enjoy that. The Art of Product podcast. Definitely check that out. But Ben has been kind of documenting his product process along the way. Of course, Chris Oliver, a fellow St. Louisan. If you see this, Chris, hey, what's up? He's got so much stuff. For one person, it's like I take a step back. I'm like, how do you manage this stuff? He's got like several apps. He's got Rails, Go Rails under the hood. He does that entire community, which seems to be doing great. So really props to him for a lot of stuff. A lot of his knowledge that he contributes to the Rails community is very appreciative. I look to him for a lot of mentoring in terms of just how he writes code or documents things, etc. He creates gyms like they're nothing, or the Jumpstart template that we created together initially. He's taken it and run with it. It's really cool to see it evolve. Of course, DHH and Jason Fried, the Basecamp guys, the Holy Grail. I've recently joined the Memberful team, and they're basically owned by Patreon at this point. Patreon's a pretty cool company that just helps creators like you and me if you're a creator. The Memberful team especially practices Basecamp methodologies. We use Basecamp day to day. We don't use Slack, which is freaking awesome. There's no real time. It's very asynchronous. Very little meetings, which is perfect for me. A lot of long form content, which is the best way to communicate, as I'm beginning to discover. Allowing you to kind of present your ideas in a well documented fashion, as opposed to just splurring them out there, whether they're good or bad. And then in Slack, they just get, they just float by like it's nothing at that point. So I really appreciate that style. Really recommend it if you could just start thinking more calmly in the workplace or with your work. Just take it in strides. Don't go too serious with it, but also just be asynchronous, think long form, and just, take the best advice I found was from Jason Fried, a random tweet or something, or a random interview. He said, with each decision, stop before you act and take 5 minutes to at least think before you react to it. And that's been a big one over the course of my career or even life, where if you just take that time to reflect quick before you react, oftentimes it yields way better results, and you don't act rashly if it's something you're not happy about, especially. Cortland Allen does the Indie Hackers site and podcast. Many props to him. He seems like a machine. A lot of sweet interviews that have been very inspiring to me as a product person now. I really love just hearing behind the scenes trials and tribulations people have of building a product. And while it seems like overnight successes for many of them, it's very much not the case. Many people have been working for years just to get to their 15 minutes of fame kind of thing. So he kind of unravels that from people that he interviews on the podcast, which is how I found them. And then Indie Hackers following that. I contribute to indie hackers here and there, but I wouldn't say I'm very active on there. It seems like a lot of the content is for early stage founders who are just getting into the game, asking kind of the same questions, which is good. Also, just kind of repetitive, but to each his own. Wathen, of course, Adam Wathen, you've probably heard of him. He's created the Tailwind CSS, which is the one I really love, but he's also had some really successful products, which is great to see. Kind of just steal tactics from him in terms of sharing and marketing and whatnot. Wes Boss, of course, is the course champion in terms of generating courses, doing them well, approaching an audience. He's done it right. He's built up his audience first and given away free stuff, and then just builds that audience, treats them well, and continues to sell new courses to them that are worth buying. So it's a really cool practice. If you need anyone that's good to follow in terms of producing a course, that's the guy. Obviously, not all of us can be Wes Boss. Like, creating that kind of audience takes years. It took him years, so you can't just do it overnight. So again, the thing takes time. A lot of content, a lot of free things. Generate that stuff first. People, be good to people, respond to them, treat them like humans, and they'll do the same to you. So it just takes time. If you give, they'll give back. Paul Graham, definitely a person to follow. A lot of great essays on his site. I'll click to it real quick. It looks kind of like this, but if you go to his essays, they are some of the best things you can read in terms of product and investing and stuff like that. So I've been getting really into more of the investing side of things as I grow older. A lot of following more of the, not so much the tech investing, but more of the energy investing, the green energy stuff. The planet right now seems like it's due to be doomed pretty soon with everything going on. So I'm interested in trying to help with that, whether it's putting my money where my mouth is in terms of investing, recycling, all those things, more clean energy, solar, those things. But that's aside from all this stuff. Of course, Rachel Andrew, CSS Grid Queen, awesome stuff with her. Jeffrey Way is like the tutorial god. If I could even compare myself to him, it'd be crazy, but it's not. Nowhere near in terms of status quo, in terms of giving great teaching advice and how to teach. Honey Badger Crew, they have a sweet app. It's only like 5 people, but these guys have a cool podcast if you're interested, called Founder Quest. That's one of my favorites for sure, because they kind of just go behind the scenes of the app and building an error tracker, which is what Honey Badger is. So it's really useful software that you can use in quite a few languages now. Taylor Otwell, of course, the creator of Laravel. He was heavily inspired by the Ruby on Rails app framework, and DHH, of course. So he said, hey, let's create this in PHP. But he seems like a machine. Aside from that, he creates so many other apps that support Laravel. A few that are open source and others that are for money, which means he makes bukus of bucks. To that effect, he kind of owns the framework, which I don't particularly love. Ruby on Rails is completely open source, which should probably be the case for Laravel. I mean, I know it's free to use for Laravel, but it's still owned by that particular dude and like 2 other guys. So it'd be cool to have a little more community behind that. I mean, obviously they have a huge community, but I mean community of contributors. In no particular order, here's quite a few podcasts I listen to. Feel free to just scan this. I'm not going to name each, but most are product related or code related stuff, build or SaaS related. I'm getting into more products on the side. I want to kind of generate some side change, just whether it's recurring revenue, that'd be cool, or just charges here and there. Future plans for the blog might include something like that, where there's some premium content. But yeah, those are there. The course this past year did pretty freaking awesome. Thanks to anyone who can help, contribute there. I think I did, it sounds like very little, but I did 37 blog posts this past year with 51 YouTube. So some blog posts have multiple videos because they're series. But the videos themselves and the tutorials like this, not like this, but like the other ones, take a ton of time. And that's why this number just, if I had full time to devote to it, I totally would probably have that doubled. But it's really tough. But a lot of views, a lot of hours of watching. I think this is a little outdated already. I just saw it roll past 8,000 subscribers. So thank you guys so much for watching and being interested in me. It's weird and crazy to see. Of course, the top playlist is Let's Build with Ruby on Rails. Top videos. I don't know why this one's the top one. It's one of my first videos, and everyone that it's funny. Everyone that watches it thinks it's a coding tutorial, but it's actually when I was using Affinity Designer and developer and photo, and creating another app I had, creating an email template. And then like part 2, everyone expected it to be code, so I got all this like hater mail for it. But essentially, this is my highest video. The second one is the Twitter clone, and then Ruby on Rails API with Vue.js. So there's some fun stats there. These are some old blog posts that have quite a few views. In this case, for me, for nobody like me, these are pretty good stats, I think. So that's pretty neat to see. That creates the skeleton screen loading effect. I had no clue this one would kind of blow up. But the Rails stuff, I kind of figured that's kind of why most people find me, I think. So that's why these make sense. This year, Hello Rails took off quite a bit. The app, I think I have about 173 customers or something now. Just rolled over $19,000 in revenue, which is pretty good for my first course. You know, if you follow what I did, I created content for, I know it sounds like a pain in the ass, but about 2 years. And it was first blog posts, and then I went to YouTube and did, I think over 200 videos now. And the thing is, I focused on Ruby on Rails. You know, I was learning that framework. I wanted to fulfill, get used to it, be able to do as much as I could with it. And putting that out in public is what kind of made this second-handedly popular in a sense. So more and more people followed me, subscribed to the channel. And then I was like, well, you could present a full featured course to them, because I had this audience and it seemed like people were interested in learning more. And YouTube, while it has its strengths, putting a whole course on there isn't quite easy. So 90 videos, imagine that on YouTube. While it could work in a playlist, it's just not quite scalable. And I figured if I could support about the maybe 4 months that I put into that course, to kind of support me, that money that you use, or that you guys, if you did grab the course, contributed, it helped with either hosting costs, the video costs, editing, all my time to do it, and then just the knowledge behind it. So hopefully, if you found it valuable, awesome. Those that did buy it, I think most popular version was the master course, of course, which had quite a few discounts associated with it. It was the only one that you could enter a coupon code. So I often had those coming up. But if you're interested in the course at all, feel free to reach out. If you're a student, I definitely offer student discounts. And those that might not be able to afford it, just reach out to me. I can hook you up. I'm not looking to make serious money off of it. I just wanted to help and extend something more modern to the community. There's always that railstutorial.org or the Odin project, but I think those are just kind of, they take you off on these weird tangents. And I feel like if you have a consolidated course with a very thorough outline, so there was like 18 hours of video that I did, and I think it takes you from the start of the course, creating a new Rails app and launching it to production app. So along that way, I just showed you everything I've kind of gathered in terms of creating a basic Rails app. So yeah, it's been great. This year has been kind of a rough one personally. I've lost a few family members, and it's kind of hit me harder than I expected. I've gained weight as a result, like things like that. I even though I'm pretty active, I eat a lot. I love to eat. So oftentimes I'm at the desk a lot. So I work, and a job with Dribble was awesome. It was getting pretty stressful though. So I would often have to be tied to my desk a lot of times just to finish things on time for what was like a sprint style of pattern. And at that point, I got so much kind of built up stress and whatever. I kind of just decided it was time to try something else, and reached out to Memberful and applied for that. They were acquired by Patreon. And I noticed the team was like 8 people at the time, and that appealed to me greatly. So smaller teams tend to be more chill and definitely more personable. You can talk to people, communicate easier, and it's been a great decision. I've had a great time so far at the company, and it's very calm. I feel much more calm and less stressed about being in a workplace, working on things, and not having so many bosses, I guess you could say. So enough of that. One thing I mentioned before is the company Memberful practices the Basecamp mantra, and especially their book Shape Up, which is a really interesting book by Ryan Singer, who is the, I guess, lead design at Basecamp. Really recommend you read this. It's not terribly long, but it's also very interesting in the way that Basecamp works, as opposed to like the sprint style that many software companies use. While both methods work, I think this one is way calmer. It's more like getting work done and living your life instead of work is your life kind of thing. So really recommend that one. Also recommend the book. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. There's so many short passages in that book that I just found myself smiling and nodding at, that it's speaking my language, I guess you could say. Like I said, I got to ditch Slack, which has been a big awakening for me. I'm less social as well on the socials like Twitter and Facebook, all that stuff. Never been a huge fan of being just very outspoken on there. I don't know. There's a lot of crap on there. So yeah. WebCrunch 2.0 is coming in 2020. So I'm working on this now behind the scenes, which might be why you see less videos coming through, but also because of the holidays. This site, this current site that you see right here, was hosted on WordPress for a number of years. It's treated me well. I don't dislike WordPress, but there are things about it I want more control over. So I've switched to, of course, running a Rails app in 2020 for the WebCrunch redesign. It's going to be pretty plain Jane like this site. There's going to be a few more features in terms of like dynamic things. So look for that to come. I won't be reaching for like discuss or something for the commenting. We'll have integrated ads where it makes sense instead of these crappy ones that you see on the blog. And then a number of other things, like I said, maybe some premium content and just more resources for those looking to learn. I have penciled in, I wouldn't say this is final, but I'm thinking of doing a free Ruby course. Everything I find online is outdated and just not really crystal clear. Ruby is a pretty sweet language. It's appealed to me way more than many others out there that I could say. So I started with PHP, with WordPress and all that, like many people do, I think. And that syntax drove me nuts. So finding Ruby and then Ruby on Rails was like a breath of fresh air. I figured, wait, why not produce something maybe free or so on the Ruby and kind of just put it out there, similar to Hello Rails, but maybe not so feature packed and huge, but more just a resource that you guys can come better prepared to a Ruby on Rails app, I guess you could say. So when I first learned Ruby on Rails, I dove right in. I didn't go and I learned the very basics of Ruby, but I already had some basic programming knowledge behind the scenes, like the basic constructs like variables, loops, conditionals, stuff like that. I think Ruby is pretty approachable in that regard, but there are ways to make it, more performant and more conventional. There are some conventions with Ruby, just like Rails, that many Rubyists uphold. So I'd like to kind of teach at least what I know, and also learn more myself. There are still some unknowns to me in terms of just writing Ruby, strictly Ruby code. So yeah, I look to kind of learn more on the channel. I'm not sure if this will be either a shared resource on the channel plus the course or just the course, a free course. The problem with that is I'd like to keep up content on the channel and then the course too, but those things, trying to do those at the same time is tough when I don't have that much time. So yeah, more content to come, of course. I'm going to probably be honing in, of course, on Ruby on Rails still, JavaScript design, and maybe some more product related things. Often considered doing a podcast, but I don't know if that's my jam. There's too many things under the sun that I'd like to do, but of course time is the ultimate culprit. Let's see, in 2019, I said what could go better in 2020. I did kind of suffer from some burnout. After producing Hello Rails, I was like done for a minute. I didn't want to be building anything, contributing to a course, doing support, anything like that. But I kind of kept at it with work and stuff. You're kind of forced to do it, even though it may not be ultimately in your mindset. I think that might have been a contributor to why I left my current role, that past role anyway, as well. I kind of did too much at once, but I was driven and it was fun, needless to say. Some more things that could go better could be richer topics and ideas. Maybe you guys can help me with those. Sometimes I struggle to come up with concepts to talk about that might appeal to you. A lot of people are on the front end framework train, and those are cool. I'm not a huge fan, to be completely honest. Like I would say I like Vue.js the most, but when it comes down to it, we're doing all this front end rendering that's very not SEO friendly, just to have some more reactivity in a given app. And it seems like such a cop out in a sense, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments. Yeah, other than that, I plan to do some more like evergreen kind of content, some stuff for true beginners that might not understand the basics. When I did Hello Rails, I've gotten feedback that it is still complicated for newcomers. And I would say that's true. When I first approached the framework, it was freaking stressful because there's so many folders, conventions, ideas, etc. to kind of get in your head. But after time and practice, you start to understand those things and learn. So I think I took that for granted, but I'd like to kind of extend out and start back from scratch in a sense and teach those concepts. So that involves like Ruby, beginning Ruby, etc. and kind of more of the odds and ends of the framework, I think, or exploring other gems, or maybe like the Stimulus.js framework I really like, even though it's a front-end framework, but it's actually tied to the Rails app in a good way instead of to completely re-render your front end. Yeah, I'm thinking of starting to have guest bloggers on the site too. So if maybe that's something you'd be interested in, definitely reach out. I wouldn't say it's a paid gig just yet because this site doesn't make a ton, to be completely honest, but I'm open to kind of increasing output and kind of sharing more wealth. Aside from that, I just want to say thanks for following along this far. We just crossed about the 8,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. The blog's been getting a lot of visits, and a lot of stuff I publish here, I publish elsewhere. I used to do Medium, but I can't stay on that site anymore, so now I moved to Dev2. If you want to check that out, I'm at Just the Lever over there. That's me. Apparently this one got quite a rave review. Some of my favorite Ruby gems, so definitely check me out there if you're interested. Follow along. And with that, guys, I thank you for a fantastic 2019. Here's to 2020. It's been a decade. Holy crap! I'm getting older, so let's make it let's make it awesome in 2020. All right, peace.